Good afternoon, President Chavez.
This is the clerk. We are now live on YouTube and the meeting portal.
Good afternoon, Supervisor Ellenberg.
Hey, Rhonda. I just texted, or Derek just texted Megan, but all of the links in my calendar invites were for audience member, not panelist. I had to go back to an older email from the clerk to find the right link. I don't know why the wrong links were in the calendar invites that I accepted. Just wanted to alert that in case it impacts any other supervisors. Thanks.
We will check into that. Thank you. Good afternoon, Sherry. Good afternoon, Ignacio and Robert.
Hey, Rhonda.
Good afternoon, Jeff.
Good afternoon.
I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you. Good afternoon, Cheryl.
Yes. Hi, good afternoon.
Have a great meeting. We can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, McGill.
Hi, good afternoon, Rhonda.
Have a great meeting.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Supervisor Wasserman.
Good afternoon, Rhonda.
Have a great meeting.
Thank you. Thanks for all your help.
Happy to do it. Good afternoon, Megan, Joe, and Jeff.
Good afternoon, Rhonda.
So Rhonda, can you hear me?
Yep.
I certainly can.
Okay.
Hi, Rhonda. Can you hear me? This is Joe.
Hi, Joe. I sure can.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, George.
Good afternoon, Rhonda.
Hello, everyone. I'm giving us a 1.5 minute warning. Sorry, Mike.
It's all right. That's good.
I was this close to it being a 2-minute warning.
That's cute.
All right. Hello, S. Joseph. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to begin our meeting on Tuesday, November 10th for our budget meeting today. And we'll begin with the roll call.
Good afternoon, Supervisor Ellenberg,
I'm here.
Supervisor Semidian,
Here.
Supervisor Cortese. We'll come back. Vice President Wasserman,
Here.
President Chavez.
Here.
One more call for Supervisor Cortese. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to go to my colleague, Mike Wasserman, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand if you're able.
Oops, wrong one. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're now going to public comment, and this is to speak to an item that is within the purview of the committee, but not necessarily on our agenda. I'm going to ask the clerk to call on the public speakers.
One moment while hands are raised. And would you like to do 2 minutes?
Yes, and we'll do 2. Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Our first speaker is Deborah I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Good afternoon. My name is Deborah Spolsky, and again, I'm coming before you as I perform essential service at the County of the Assessor in the Ownership Identification Department. I've been with the Assessor for 14 years. I'm also a disaster service worker there at 70 West, and I live in District 4. I'm asking you, the kind Board of Supervisors of our great county, put off the budget decision until January. Will you give our unit enough time to be reassigned in the assessor's office? 10 days really isn't enough to get reorged, especially when there's no dialogue from executive management. And my job is on the line along with 11 other people. Will you give ownership identification a shot to move under another position? We are highly trained individuals, and there's at least 40 positions left unfilled in the assessor's office, on hold, such as exemptions, data coordinators, and the coveted appraiser positions. Who is rushing you, and why are you spending so much money on parking and replacements for our disaster workers? I know our work is essential for our community, and again, I remind you that my regular job is to serve grieving widows, widowers, grieving children, and frightened people that today are worried about their taxes and their homes. It is compassionate, essential work. And today, more than ever, COVID rages on, even in our 70 West. We must avoid any harm that this proposed budget will have on communities and residents who rely upon our services and the SEIU 521 workforce, which are primarily low wage already. Please don't balance the budget on the frontline workers again. We must take action and remember what happened during the last recession. Please delay the vote.
The next speaker is Carolyn. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Caroline Nguyen, and I'm an assessment clerk in the assessor's office. My work is essential for our community because assessment clerks are frontline workers who interface with the public daily. Everyone from disabled vets, grieving family members, first-time homebuyers, recent retirees, empty nesters, paralegals, title companies, and more. Please avoid cuts and elimination of positions as to not compromise the critical services to programs that are already critically low levels. This further compromises the quality of service and our ability to generate revenue. We must avoid any harm that this proposed budget will have on communities most impacted by inequalities, including residents who rely on our services and SEIU 521 workforce who are primarily low-wage workers. We cannot balance a budget on frontline workers again, and we must learn from the actions taken during the last recession. Delay the vote on the budget for next year, as we will have a new White House administration in January 2021, and we must work together in delaying any cuts that could further be mitigated with any new federal funding stimulus that can help save our services. Thank you for your time.
Before the clerk calls on the next person, I just want to remind folks that this is for public comment for things that are not on the agenda. So items 12 and 13 will be heard later. If you speak now during public comment, you will not be able to speak under 12 or 13 if you've already spoken on the topic. Thank you. Sorry for that interruption, clerk.
The next speaker is Christopher Alvarado. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Okay, good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. My name is Christopher Alvarado, a licensed marriage and family therapist and an essential worker for mental health services. I have been at Gardner Health Services for 8 years. I work in the Family and Children Outpatient Program, providing mental health and case management services to youth ages 6 through 21 and their families. I am here today to ask you to not make cuts to the budget for mental health services provided by community-based organizations such as Gardner Health Services. Our clients are working to break the cycle of poverty into which they were born. They come to Gardner with so few resources. Women who have been told that they are worthless, children who believe that they do not have a future, Teenagers about to graduate, but despite what they've been taught in the classroom, are still emotionally unprepared to meet the challenges they'll face, dreaming of the day that they do not have to rely on the system. Our families are the least prepared for this crisis, depending on minuscule, often inconsistent income, and now face another obstacle to greater autonomy and success. Cuts are not the answer, and we can work through this together, but we must not rush decisions that will hurt our community and our workforce. Please do not cut the essential services and contracts that our communities rely on. Thank you for your time.
The next speaker is Kelly Demertis. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here and your time today. My name is Kelly Demertis. I am a mental health therapist at Gardner Health Services, a community-based organization. And I am here today to advocate on the behalf of my most vulnerable clients. I am working with clients ages 6 to 17, and these are clients who have gone through significant trauma, who have substance use in their families, who are on the brink of homelessness due to COVID and need our support. They need consistent care that we are providing through mental health services. More specifically, these are clients who are at risk of losing their lives to suicide. These are clients who are expressing active suicidal ideation due to the stressors of the pandemic matched with their underlying mental health concerns, depression, anxiety, trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder. And because of our preventative services, we're able to safety plan and help these families and these clients seek safety rather than always having to utilize more expensive services, including hospitals, police, law enforcement, ambulances, things that the community, we so heavily rely on. But our role is to support with these clients now and provide the preventative work to give them that safe space to talk about these issues before it's too late, before we rely on more expensive measures. And cuts are just simply not the answer at this time. We can work through this together, but we cannot rush decisions that will hurt our community and our workforce. Please do not cut the essential services and our contracts that our community relies on. Thank you.
The next speaker is telephone ending in 591. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking. Telephone 591 is not accepting the unmute. I will go ahead and move. Are you there, 591?
Is that me? Sorry.
Yes, that is you.
Okay. Hi. My name is David Hoffman. I'm a mental health counselor and substance use counselor at Gardner Family Health. Although I've been here only for a very short period of time, I worked as a case manager and mental health counselor in another nonprofit for 3 years. And I would like to speak specifically to the mental health needs that are current and ramping up and related to the pandemic and COVID-19. What the experts agree within the U.S. and around the world is that we don't yet know the full effects that the pandemic will have on youth and transition youth and families and adults. The clear indication is that the effects are going to be far worse than anything we've ever experienced in our lifetime. And as history would show, we can't depend on federal and state budgets to necessarily cover the essential mental health services. Demand is up, resources are down, and the needs are just going to become greater. We don't know, like I said, what the effects will be. There is no other way to provide these services other than with organizations like Gardner and the communities which we serve. And as we've all seen, the effects of the pandemic have affected more people of lower SES and minorities and people of color. And these are the communities that we serve. So I'm asking you on behalf of my fellow therapist, Gardner, to not cut any of the essential mental health services. Thank you.
The next speaker is Liz Lacey. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, this is Liz Lacey. We've talked before. I'm just here to talk about the stress that was recently placed on our admin booking from DOC when Jeff Smith decided to usurp his powers in a Napoleon Bonaparte manner, in which he decided to remove the functions that the sheriff has been kindly managing over at DOC, and decided that Matt Fisk from Pre-Trial Services should be running admin booking. Now, this is a mandatory subject to bargaining, which was totally denied. And post facto was also denied that it was ever happening from labor relations. So I would like to say that I think we need to do a reorganization and some sort of study or analysis of labor relations and their lack of unbiased when it comes, or excuse me, yeah, no, I said that right. The lack of unbiased when it comes to managing issues in the workplace. Clearly, they cannot remain unbiased in some of the decisions that they make. We're waiting on a meet and confer on the issue. From what we were told by labor relations, it never happened, which is untrue because last Monday, there was a meeting in which Matt Fisk asserted his power over admin booking, and we still do not have a clear answer. These people are already stressed out from losing 5 vacant positions, which was all of their vacant positions, which, you know, you decimated the sheriff's office as well. People are so burnt out from COVID. They were burnt out from that. They were burnt out from before. And now adding to this stress, please, I beg you, please do something about the structure of labor relations and Jeff Smith pulling Bonaparte moves. Thank you.
Just real quickly before the clerk calls the next name, Elisa Kofkinsberg will be the last speaker at this time.
The next speaker is Jason Dorsey. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Good afternoon. My name is Jason Dorsey. I'm a general maintenance mechanic at Facilities and Fleet, also chief steward and the vice chair of the blue collar unit. I just want to point out a few things. That I think it's important that we carefully review how we fill and delete open codes at the working level. Every budget cycle, when it's bad, frontline worker positions are cut or eliminated. When the population of the frontline staff is nearly equal to the management, we must take a hard look at how frontline services are going to be provided. We need to work together on this process. We need to postpone these cuts until after we have time to see the new impact of the new administration and possibly an extension to the 1115 waiver. And I just want to throw in another, I just got a text, a little information piece. We have yet another positive COVID in the assessor's office. That's all I got. Thank you.
The next speaker is Wendy Ho. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Good afternoon, supervisors. This is Wendy Ho with the Silicon Valley Council of Nonprofits. SDCN fully recognizes that the pandemic has had a very disproportionate impact not only on our communities, but also on the county budget. We also recognize that in an environment where county programs and staff will experience cutbacks, nonprofits with county funding will not emerge unscathed. We also realize that the current federal and state funding landscape is fluid and unpredictable, which makes county budget planning challenging. We like to acknowledge the team at the County Executive's Office for their leadership in working under what is very trying and difficult circumstances. We know that the County Executive's Office is working hard to serve the community, to save jobs and protect the county's fiscal health. SDCN and our nonprofit members and partners understand the challenges of having to do with more with less in these unprecedented times and want to work with county leaders to find creative solutions to address these challenges. We look forward to working with you and our continued partnership with you. We've also appreciated the county administration's leadership in working with its CBO partners through the community-based initiative over the past year. This initiative is really aimed to promote collaboration between the county and this CBO community to improve county contracting processes and build partnerships that lead to quality service outcomes. Again, as always, SCCN stands ready to work with you together on these goals to help navigate our community during these trying times. And again, we look forward to our continued partnership with the county. Thank you.
And that concludes our speakers.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to just go through the agenda. What I'd like to recommend to my colleagues is for item 12, I'd like to have staff go through A through H. Then I'm going to ask if there are any public comments, and then I will come back to the board. I know these are chunky, but I want to take them by their number. And so here are the whole alphabet soup. Go to the public and then go back through. Each board member can ask the questions that they need to at that time. Is that all right with everyone? Thank you. All right, with that, I'm going to turn to Dr. Smith.
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Wanted to make a few introductory remarks just before we get too far along. Couple of issues about technicalities. First of all, the budget or the reductions before you have no reductions to CBOs or community clinics recommended whatsoever. As you remember, we talked about before, we were asking the departments to meet with our community partners, discuss modifying budgets, and trying to have a target of reductions of about 6% of the general fund. None of that has been accomplished yet, and we still wait to see if they will actually get to that point. We're not recommending any reductions at this point. So I just want to be clear, there's no contract or CBO reductions in front of you, and there's no specific plan to bring them back to you at any particular time, unless we can come up with negotiated reductions, which obviously would require both sides to agree. Secondly, any of the personnel layoffs that are being discussed, we're not asking you to act on them today or at the next hearing. What we're asking for action is on the 20th. Any of those reductions that involve layoffs will not be effective until March 7th to allow for additional planning. Any of the incumbents in those positions will have the option to participate in the voluntary severance program, which would be an incentive program and a lump sum payment. They also have the option to participate in the regular in-placement process to move to alternate vacant positions that are funded. And we as the board and the county, or you as the board and we as the county, have the option to change recommendations all the way up until March if it becomes necessary. Also, I just want to make clear what the board's being asked to do today. Yesterday and today were the equivalent, essentially, of our workshops. They are intended to allow the board and the public to make input and to provide information to the board and to be able to get information from the board about what they would like to see as further information to come from staff. During the next two meetings, which we are calling special meetings, which would be analogous to our hearings, although they're not technically hearings, we would expect that the board would debate the recommendations and the recommended budget reductions, consider all the information that they've asked for from the staff, consider further information from the public, and work toward a recommendation to the staff or direction to the staff at the end of the second so-called hearing to come back on the 20th with actual final action on the reductions. So wanted to make sure that nobody thought that today we're asking the board to take action to reduce anything. We're just trying to go through the appropriate workshop process. So with that, I'll turn it over to Greg Ituria, who will go through the rest of the county executive's recommendations. We do have the department heads available for questions and answers. Again, I want to reemphasize that the recommendations from the county executive's budget are not the same as the recommendations that the departments had. They've been changed to some extent, and only what you see in your documents from the county executive's budget are the ones to be considered. Greg?
Good afternoon, President Chavez, members of the board. This is Greg Ituria, County Budget Director. Am I successfully sharing my screen with the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So as Dr. Smith had mentioned, this is a continuation of the presentation of recommended cost reductions that we began yesterday. For those that weren't able to join us yesterday, we reviewed cost reduction proposals for 3 departments, Social Services Agency, the Valley Medical Center, hospitals and clinics, as well as the Technology Services and Solutions Department. And then today we're going to continue with the remaining cost reduction recommendations. Let's see. All right, so if I get my, there we go. The recommended cost reductions for the budget for the Office of the County Executive includes recommendations to delete 13 positions that would yield an ongoing savings next fiscal year of a little more than $2 million annually. At least 8 of these positions are expected to be vacant by March. Service impacts go across multiple lines of services provided by the Office of the County Executive, and including anticipated delays in the implementation of a number of initiatives related to sustainability and disaster communication and risk communication, program development, as well as support for that are provided through employee wellness and IT security projects potentially. However, to the extent that we can, we're going to redistribute that work to existing staff to try to mitigate to the extent possible impacts on services. In the development of these recommendations, the department did recognize and wanted to point out for the racial equity considerations that many of these initiatives are built to improve our community and respond to initiatives such as climate change and economic prosperity, and just want to recognize that many of the people that would benefit from these initiatives are historically marginalized communities. And rather than pausing, as President Chavez mentioned earlier, I'll go through each of these, then we'll have that opportunity for a question as we get through each of these department presentations. Thank you. Next, we have the recommended cost reductions for the finance agency. And this includes the recommendation to delete 2 vacant positions in the finance agency. Service impacts anticipated to impact the timeliness of processing corrections to property tax rolls, and also an impact on the available resources to assist with hospital-related collections. And at this point, we recognize anytime you reduce services or reduce resources in these areas, there's potential impact on revenue collection. So obviously we would monitor that. And if at some later point we think the resources are necessary to maintain our revenue collections, we'll want to return to the board for reconsideration. For the Office of the Assessor, the county executive's recommendation includes pursuing a reorganization proposed by the county assessor that would add 8 positions, delete 20 positions for a net reduction of 12 full-time equivalent positions. The ongoing savings is anticipated to be nearly 1.4 million in net savings. This is a substantial reorganization of the Standard Services and Exemptions Division of the Assessor, as well as some other reorganization of other changes in the information systems and administration divisions. The reorganization replaces a variety of positions. However, the assessor is assuring all of us that they believe that there's going to be no net impact to our ability to develop the role and collect property tax revenues, and that really this is addressing redundancies that they've recognized that they can actually produce the amount of work that they need to produce with less resources, and that all the work can be redistributed among existing staff. And then for the Procurement Department, the county executive is recommending the deletion of 2 vacant management positions within the department for a net savings of $442,000 annually beginning next year, with of course some savings this year as well, since they're already vacant positions. The service impact at this point is thought to be minimal, because these are vacant positions and that these responsibilities can already be absorbed with remaining management positions within the department. For the Facilities and Fleet Department, the county executive is recommending the deletion of 13 vacant positions. And because these positions have been vacant, there is not currently an anticipated service impact or even a near future impact by eliminating these vacancies. However, we do recognize that in the future, as new facilities or campuses come online, there may be need for supplemental positions. They may be different classifications than this. We'll certainly want to assess the need in the future as new facilities come online. Then regarding the Consumer and Environmental Protection Agency, the county executive is recommending the deletion of 6 positions, and each of these positions are expected to be vacant by the March 7th effective date. The ongoing savings is anticipated to be nearly $800,000. There is certainly going to be some reduced capacity by eliminating these positions and not allowing the department to be able to fill them. And this includes reduced capacity for everything from inspections of weights and measuring devices to the processing of stormwater permits and other regulatory compliance assurance, and reducing capacity to respond to non-mandated calls for services involving animals. The agency had several racial equity considerations throughout their process of developing these proposals to forward for board consideration, recognizing that many of the clients that are the beneficiaries of these services are some of our more vulnerable and underserved communities. And for the Department of Planning and Development, the county executive's recommended action includes the deletion of 4 vacant positions, which will yield an ongoing savings of about $674,000 annually. Of this amount, about 483 of it's in the general fund, and about 190,000 of it is the permit revenue fund, recognizing that there is less permit revenue coming in this year because of activities. It also helps balance the ins and outs of that particular restricted fund. Service impacts, again, recognizing that there'll be reduced capacity, that there may be some extension of completion dates for those inspections, and less of the support work that would be provided by the office specialist. It could be shifted or would be shifted to other high-cost staff. And recognizing that under the current application volumes, these deletion of these 2 vacant senior planner positions could have some impact on processing times. Also recognizing that if there is a reduction in permit volume due to economic downturn, which is still possible, then there might be less of an impact. For the Department of Child Support Services, just a reminder, the Department of Child Support Services is in a separate fund. They don't have a use of discretionary dollars. It's all federal and state dollars, but they have continued every year having to deal with reduced funding from federal and state government, and this year is no exception. The recommended action is to delete 3 positions, each that will be vacant by March. And recognizing that this year there's a $3.3 million net cost, primarily due to revenue decline. Just as a reminder, when the state adopted their budget this summer, they had some additional reductions to child support services that would be triggered in October if there was an additional federal stimulus funding, which, as we all know, we didn't get the additional funding. The state triggers were made, and there's an immediate reduction in funding for child support services, so the department needs to respond to that. They do have some fund balance that they're able to use, and we're recognizing that here just as a temporary measure. However, on an ongoing basis, they're going to have to reduce not only these 3 positions to stay within their budget, but we anticipate in the upcoming budget process, they'll more than likely have to recommend a request to delete additional positions. That has been the trend. Service impacts, as the board will know, we've had to do this every year with that flat or decreased funding. Each year, the caseload has had to increase because of the funding reductions or lack of adequate funding from federal and state government for the Department of Child Support Services. And this concludes the presentation of all the departmental recommendations. And I'll pause now in case the board has any requests from any of the departments that we've spoke to here, and they should be on the line and available to respond. Thank you.
Thank you. What I'm going to first do is see if there are any members of the public who would like to speak to item 12. And just to be clear, this is the Office of the County Exec, Finance Agency, Office of the Assessor, Procurement, Facilities and Fleet, Consumer and Environmental Protection, Department of Planning and Development, and the Department of Child Support Services. So we'll go first to the public, and then I'm going to come back to the board for comments or questions. We'll give folks a minute if they'd like to speak to any of these items.
Would you like to do 2 minutes?
Yes, thank you.
First speaker is Zeb Feldman. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. Zeb Feldman with SEMA OE3. SEMA OE3 certainly understands the need to balance the budget, and we prize our relationship with the county to find solutions during the budgetary crisis. I am, however, coming to you with some concern over the proposed cuts in two areas. The first is cuts to filled SEMA positions, while there are thousands of vacant funded positions that could alternatively be reduced, as well as contracts and contractors with outside agencies. The second area of concern are the layoffs occurring in the assessor's office that are being billed as a reorganization. SEMA will always provide solutions and not just resist a cut. So I want to draw your attention to some of the solutions we've offered so far. Firstly, I want to thank you and administration for the VSIP program, or Voluntary Separation Incentive Program, that will realize savings this fiscal year, and many SEMA members have already put in for it. Further, as you're aware, we have more than 2,000 vacant funded positions that we're asking you cut first prior to eliminating SEMA filled positions. Other solutions we've submitted white papers to the board addressing the cuts to intergovernmental affairs that was sent this weekend, as well as last week, the integrated pest management white paper, as well as others. Please carefully examine these prior to approving cuts to filled SEMA positions in these departments. And I want to thank you all, as well as Jeff and Greg and administration, for understanding and withdrawing the cuts to IPM. In the assessor's office, we're continuing to meet and confer with the department. However, it's clear that these meetings will not result in a change to the assessor's recommendations. So SEMA is asking that the board reject the reorganization in the assessor's office that will result in a layoff of SEMA positions. In conclusion, focus on cuts to contracts and contractors, vacant positions, rather than layoff filled ones, and oppose the reorg in the assessor's office.
The next speaker is Tara Duncan. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all of you. I am Tara Duncan with the County Assessor's Office. The work I perform here in the business division is very essential for our community. I provide stellar and complex services to our community daily, assembling data, coordinating and maintaining deadlines for processing property assessments, ensuring the taxpayer has an experience that is fair and accurate, and have shown that time and time again. Avoid cuts and elimination of positions that will further compromise the quality of services and our ability to generate revenue. Delay the vote on the budget to next year. A new White House administration will begin in January 2021. It is critical that we galvanize in delaying any cuts that could be mitigated with new federal funding stimulus that can save our services. Right now, more than ever, integrity and sensitivity towards others are needed. Let's shift the culture and fill vacant positions that promote development. I too was affected by the reorg in 2007, and it was quite traumatic. So I will say, could you please just take the time in putting this off? We would appreciate it. Thank you all. Stay well, stay safe.
The next speaker is Adam Cole. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board members. This is SEMA Business Rep Adam Cole. I'll be echoing a lot of the points that my colleague, Mr. Feldman, made. Since the beginning of the COVID crisis, SEMA members have received both individually and as a whole regular recognition for going above and beyond to provide services, fill gaps, and keep programs running. SEMA members remain on the front lines, supporting our community through these difficult times. They are putting in long hours, and unlike many other county employees, are doing so without the benefit of overtime or hazard pay. It was unfortunate to see the proposed cuts to filled SEMA positions on this agenda item today. We owe it to both our staff and our community to evaluate and find other solutions during this budget crisis prior to cutting staff who are providing essential services to our community. There remain many funded vacant positions which can be cut, in many departments where there remains overuse of contractors. In addition, SEMA notes with concern when the board continues to approve spending on non-essential county functions. The county's unions are here to partner with the county and to find solutions to the budget crisis that maintain both services and staff. Thank you for your time.
That concludes our public speakers.
Thank you. I'm now going to go to my board colleagues and see if anybody has any comments or questions. I'll start with, if I have any, could folks put their hands up? And maybe, Susan, may I start with you? Oh, you don't have any questions or comments?
You may, but I don't have comments on these
Okay.
items. Thank you.
Supervisor Simidian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to say, I do want to keep a careful eye on both the intergovernmental functions that were referenced and the integrated pest management functions that were referenced. And so I just didn't want that to be a surprise as our conversations go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Cortese?
Yeah, I would echo Supervisor Simidian's comments in terms of my areas of concern. I'm not clear, and I suppose maybe we can get some additional explanation on it if necessary today on the assessor's office approach in terms of filled positions versus vacant positions, or if there's a discrepancy there in terms of people's understanding. I'd just like to be clear on that, or make sure the board's clear on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't know if there's somebody here from the assessor's office who can respond to that now. I'm looking at the screen. We have a lot of people on the screen, so.
While we're trying to get somebody from the assessor, I want to address one other issue that was raised. The IPM integrated pest management proposal was initially on the list and it's been taken off, so it's not being considered by the board at this point.
Thank you. I see, I did see, oh, there's Larry. Magic box. Okay, Mr. Stone, did you want to respond to Supervisor Cortese?
Yes, very briefly. This reorganization will only eliminate redundancy and duplication of work by consolidating the work into a single unit called the Property Transfer Unit. At the end, in addition to the 6 vacant positions that we offered up in February, in the end, there will be a net reduction of 18 positions, saving $2.16 million, which is a 7% reduction in the entire assessor staff. There will be let me stress, no reduction in productivity, efficiencies, or customer service. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that anybody has.
Supervisor Cortese, did that respond to what you were asking?
I'm not, I guess I was looking for a more specific response on what I thought I was hearing from a couple of the speakers, an assertion that you could achieve the same reduction goal with vacant positions as opposed to filled positions. And I just wasn't clear on that. I did hear the assessor say he's got a scheme for creating a single property transfer unit, and evidently maybe that has something to do with it, but I'm having trouble connecting the dots there.
Most of the vacant positions that we have in the department are in areas where they're revenue producing, where we can't, they're not interchangeable. Most of the people in the OID unit, which I'm recommending be eliminated, actually consolidated with PTU, are not vacant positions. Vacant positions exist because we can't attract them, exist in revenue producing areas. And that is, appraisals, real property, the business division where we can't afford it all. And also, Supervisor, 4 of the eliminated positions in the OID or the consolidated are going to be added to PTU, which allows the OID people, at least 4 of them, to apply for those jobs, and it would be a promotion for them. So not all of the OID people are going to be eliminated. We're adding 4 to the PTU, which is the next unit, which is the duplicative folks. And we hope that the OID people will apply for those jobs. In fact, they'll be in the best position to compete for those jobs because they have a head start with the fact that they have a lower level but related work program now.
Through the chair, chair then, so hypothetically, if those four were able to be retained through the hiring process for this PTU, that would leave what then, a net of 14 displaced workers? I get it that there's 18 reductions, but is that what you're saying, that 4 of the 18 could end up in the PTU?
Well, you really start with the OID first. The OID would eliminate 13 positions, 1 supervisor and the rest part of the OID unit. 4 of those people in the OID unit would be allowed to compete for the expanded 4 positions in PTU. So if that math adds up, of the 18 positions, we have 3 others where the workload simply went away. You know, we're expanding our performance in the information systems division. We keep creating things that we can do electronically, and that makes it so there's not that the workload goes down for the people that were there.
All right. Well, thank you for the explanation. I think for workshop purposes, that helps me at least understand it enough of the background or the rationale to also in the future perhaps understand whether or not there's an alternative available to try to accomplish some of the same goals. I think that was the purpose behind my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor, you know, we're also hoping that in placement with the vacancies for the people that would be for the positions that would be eliminated. And I want to state this, we only looked at positions, we never looked at people and who they are, but we hope that the in-placement system would find a place for for all of these people to work. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the assessor? Just for the assessor, just for a minute. No, I'm going to just ask one, and then I'll go back to the mic to you, and then back to you, Susan. Actually, this Assessor Stone, this actually may in part be for you and in part be for Dr. Smith. I do think that Dr. Smith, you began this section by describing the process for employees that would be impacted by any of these cuts. And I know that I've seen in different pieces, there's this internal process. What I'm unclear about is, and perhaps this is something that we could get just on one sheet that everybody could look at, the in-placement process timeline relative to the early retirement option that you described at the beginning of the meeting, and then also the anticipated number of people that would actually not have an opportunity to stay with the county organization. I know that's an estimate, but I would be interested again in seeing that in one place. In part, I'd like to be able to send that to folks who are asking me the questions I just asked you easily, and to be able to forward that. For Assessor Stone, I have 2 questions. The first is, when you were saying that you drew a distinction between the people and the positions, and when I had spoken to you earlier, one of the points that you made to me was that if these changes were made, that there would be no more flexibility within your department to manage any additional cuts. Is that accurate?
No more opportunities in the revenue producing areas for sure. We have 5 vacant senior appraiser positions, which we are desperately trying to resolve, to hire for. That skill set doesn't seem to exist in the industry, so we're going to have to do some training ourselves. In fact, I'm contacting De Anza College, for example, to see if they can get some kind of real estate appraisal function. So train people to come to work here, because it takes about 5 years to take an entry-level appraiser and put that appraiser in a position where they have the training and the experience to appraise shopping centers and office buildings and more complex properties. So what I said to you, or what I tried to say to you, is that in the real property division and the business division, we have no more slack whatsoever. And anything additional that will happen there, including the incentive, will in fact impact revenue.
Is the, and just to draw the distinction that you just made, Assessor Stone, this was, I'm kind of shifting up my second question for you based on what you just said, but on the on the revenue side, I understand the point you're raising, and I also understand the point you're raising about those assessors. I mean, the appraisers. I know you've been on the hunt for appraisers for a while. Are there other positions that are on the non-revenue side that you are also assessed? Because really what I'm just trying to better understand is the assessment that you made to make the determination that these were the positions you most needed to shift. And in part of what's prompting my question is is really the situation we're finding ourselves in with COVID-19, and whether or not there's going to be a reappraisals, or what the impact overall will be to your office.
Well, Supervisor, I think that we're about as lean as you can be going into this reorganization. And as you know, in my 26 years, I've been through like 4 downturns, two minor downturns, and then 2 great recessions, one the Great Recession and one the COVID recession. And we've never had a budget target during my 26 years there. But when I realized that when the budget deficit projection went from $180 million to 200, or now 300 to $600 million, that even though I wasn't required by the county executive to reduce my staff, we looked at ways to be able to do that. We immediately, last February, I said to my staff, find some way that we can participate, even though we're not being asked to or required to. And that's when we offered up 6 vacant positions. Then when we realized the budget deficit was exploding like it did, I asked my staff again, in responding to the county executive's request, not demand, but request, we came up with this reorganization plan, which, by the way, is long overdue. I'm rather embarrassed that we've waited this long, but the environment is right now to be able to accomplish this. And there's not many, if any, vacant positions outside the revenue producing side of our office. The assessment roll's gone up 375%. When this is done, when this reorganization, the staff in my 26 years will have gone up less than 5%.
So, Assessor Stone, I'm sorry, let me just refine what I'm asking, is that, do the conditions of COVID-19 impact potentially you needing additional staff in the next coming year? And what prompted my question is that I think this was something that you'd also shared with me that I've been thinking about, which is the impact of perhaps even reassessments, or the number of reassessments that folks are going to be bringing our way. Does that mean that you may need additional staffing, and or is the additional support going to be contracted if needed?
Well, we don't contract for folks here, but we will have an increase in the appraisals, in the audit staff, or need for that with the economic environment that exists. Our workload is really down in property transfers, which is the division that we're reorganizing. Our property transfers right now right now are down 25%. And we expect them to even to go lower as a direct result of a COVID. So we need less people in the OID and PTU units on the basis of a reduction in workload right today. But this reorganization will set us in good shape for the long term. We do expect, and this is not a direct response to your question, we do expect increases in appraisals. In appeals. We do expect substantial increases in the reassessment downward of commercial and industrial properties, because COVID is basically a commercial and industrial property recession. But I think we can handle it. We do expect some of our, we don't know yet, but we do expect some of our appraisers and auditors to take advantage of the separation incentive, which of course creates a bigger problem than the one we already have.
And then this is, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask this question of Dr. Smith. I thought that the separations, if people took them, were because the jobs would be closed behind the individual. Is that not accurate? Dr. Smith?
He's muted. There you go.
Oh, you're muted if you're speaking. Dr. Smith?
Okay, so I'm technologically limited here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Let me try. There are two questions that you asked. I'll try to answer both of them.
I only need one. One of them is just very simply, I thought that if somebody took a voluntary separation, that the job closed behind them. That the job would, yeah.
99.9% of that is true, yes. But okay, for the people that were on this list of potential layoffs, we're also allowing them to participate in the VSIP, so they will still get the same benefits. So it'll be the other way around.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Assessor Stone. Does anybody else have questions for Larry? None? Okay. Thank you, Assessor.
Thank you.
Supervisor Wasserman, and then I'll come back to you, Susan.
Thank you. No more questions.
You don't have any questions?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Supervisor Ellenberg?
Thank you so much. I appreciate the fleshing out of the assessor's reduction plan, and my eyes had just skimmed over F, the Consumer and Environmental Protection Agency, and I did want to make a comment on that item, please. And there I'd like administration to report back at the mid-year with options for the board to consider regarding a fee reduction or elimination program to support hospitality, entertainment, and other sectors that have been shut down or forced to operate at reduced capacity. And I'd like that report back to include administration's recommendations on which sectors should be included, which fees should be waived, what eligibility requirements we might require, and the budget impacts of this type of program.
So Dr. Smith, is that, or
somebody, right?
Yeah, can someone respond?
Sound.
This is Joe Zintek, Director of the Consumer and Environmental Protection Agency, and we are looking at that now, and we can report back at mid-year.
Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate it.
Thanks for that. Susan, you good? Everybody, anybody else? Supervisor Smithian, everybody's good? Okay. I have just a few questions, and let me apologize. I don't want to run over other people's good comments. So I'm going to pop around just a bit. The first item is that I know we are re-examining the one of the public safety positions for this building. And Dr. Smith, I wanted to ask if when this report comes back that we take a look at the take a look at any changes we're making to security. And part of the reason I'm asking that is we've got a lot of people in the building, and a number of departments have raised not negative concerns, but more just how we're moving people through the building at different times. And so I am very interested in making sure that we have the appropriate level of security for the building.
Okay, can I respond to that a little bit?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I didn't know if you could unmute yourself, but go ahead.
I figured it out.
There you go.
This particular position is an unclassified position, so it will expire anyhow after the time period that's required for expiration. So that's the reason it was put on the list. It's not a reflection of whether or not we have sufficient staff. We are currently reassessing what type and number of security we would need. But this particular position will expire anyhow. So that's why it's on the list.
Right, but the option is always to extend the expiration if we see a need for the building. So is what you're saying is an assessment will be done between now and when this person leaves as to whether or not there's an additional need for security, or how to respond to that change in coverage?
The first part of what you said, yes, we will do an assessment, but we won't be able to convert the specific position. We'll have to create a different position if we need one.
And the assessment would.
Yeah, that's just because it's an unclassified position.
And Jeff, the assessment would be completed when?
It should be done before the beginning of March.
And the position will be gone when?
March 7th.
So we could set a goal for end of January, because it takes a long time if we have to take an action, right?
Well, it would be better to do it during the mid-year in February, yes.
So we're going to so if in fact we need that service, we will have a gap in that service between March and whenever we are able to respond to it.
No, we won't have a gap. It's a matter of switching out positions, so we would do an add delete administratively if we needed a position.
Board President Chavez, may I step in a moment and expand upon the county exec's comments? So he's correct, it's an unclassified position and it would burn out in December. What we're trying to do is we're trying to create a specific classification that's unique to facility security, because it really isn't just a program manager. So that's with ESA. I can ask them how long it's going to take to create this new class. We're having discussions internally because we share your concern about needing appropriate security. So we're having discussions about using extra help as a way to bridge from the time that the unclassified expires to the time we can go through a recruitment process and fill the new specialized classification. So that's our plan internally.
Got it. That's really helpful. And the thing I would just want to know is how long do we anticipate that will take? And
I will ask ESA and we'll provide that information to you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And then if I could go to to Joe for a moment, Joe Zantek, if on the reduction in the sustainability areas, my understanding is that the impacted programs could be the work being done on Stanford, embedding sustainability into affordable housing projects, and then our county purchasing policy. Is that accurate?
Thank you. I think this might refer to the Office of Sustainability and
oh, you're right. I'm sorry.
I
just did a pop quiz with you and it's not yours. Sorry about that. Sylvia, is this you?
Supervisor Chavez, I'm here. This is Jasneet Sharma, the Director for the Office of Sustainability, and
Okay.
happy to respond to any question you might have.
Thank you. So what I was asking about is with the deletion of this position, and what I'm concerned about, it's a second deletion, is that will it impact the body of work that's being planned for Stanford, or the Stanford plan, the embedding sustainability into affordable housing projects, and the county's purchasing policy?
To some extent, not. We are looking into our own internal capacity of how we keep moving the sustainable purchasing policy work moving forward. So we do have some staff that have come back from the EOC. One staff person that came back recently. So looking at our capacity there. The other ones that we called out in the legislative file, the service impacts, there were a number of them that we called out to you, which at this point, it would be dependent on our capacity to both support the general plan, Stanford plan, embedding sustainability in them. But we will try our best to provide as much capacity as we can.
Jasneet, I think that I appreciate your candor. I think the answers we want to understand is really just what the challenges are going to be, because what concerns me is that it appears that we'll end up needing to contract to get these services addressed. And the one thing I've learned about Stanford is that it's very complicated, and having a history with it is actually on occasion pretty helpful in terms of internally to the organization. So that's what prompted my question. Thank you for that. And I'll thank my colleagues for your patience. I think the only other thing I just wanted to say is that I really appreciated that some reports were really clear about the impacts to services, and others reference impacts to services broadly. And I think we, in order to be frank with the public about changes we're making, we need to be able to say with more clarity what the impacts are, and appreciate that that's, it's been an area that I've been interested in for years, which is how do we demonstrate the work we're doing. And then the second, I really appreciate, Dr. Smith, your willingness to bring forward some clarity with timelines about the impacts to employees, and just really appreciate my colleagues letting me run down those different strains of thought. Are there any other questions or comments from my colleagues on this section? Seeing none, we'll go to item 13. Dr. Smith, I don't know if you're leading us through these referrals, or how you wanted to proceed in this area.
Greg is leading you through the referrals. Greg?
Okay, yep. This is Greg Etruria, County Budget Director. And in your budget packet, we have submitted off-agenda reports that have been prepared by staff in response to a variety of referrals and requests for information since last August, the last time we had a comprehensive budget discussion. There were 10 items that the board asked for additional information to be returned for discussion in this month in November. And those items are, again, I can go over very quickly since I don't have a PowerPoint for these.
I think the board has them in front of them.
Okay.
Colleagues are, it's on packet page 7. Yes. Why don't I do this? I'll go to the public first, and then I'll go to the board for, I'll call each item and see if there are comments and questions by item. If there are any public speakers on item 13, and this is item 13, and I think it's A through K are these items, and these are the last items on our agenda. So I will I would ask that the clerk begin calling folks. Thank you.
The first speaker is Sparky Harlan. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute, and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, this is Sparky Harlan, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Behavioral Health Contractors Association in response to our draft for the crises mobile response teams by CBOs. We've been working with Behavioral Health Department on this model, but I did want to point out that we have two issues that are occurring right now. And I think part of the problem is we're trying to include the response to homeless individuals in calls and those that might come from the community families for their individuals. As we've been working with Debug on this, the CBO response that we really want to emphasize, that's not the police or behavioral health department, are those calls we get from families for a loved one, family member who needs a mental health response. Over and over again, they've been asking for this to be the community-based organizations, not the behavioral health department, nor the police. And part of our model is training community to respond to their own crises. So this program we're really looking at is embedded in the community. And that's the model we're really asking for and Debug is asking for. So I hope we can continue to work on that one with the department. The other one is how do we respond to homeless individuals that the police are now getting and many of us from OSH. I would say that maybe those could go through the call center and to work with OSH to figure out how we dispatch all the people doing these services to homeless to respond to those calls. So we might want to divide this up, but keep that in-home response to families in the CBO and community only, because that's what they're asking for, not the behavioral health department. Thank you.
The next speaker is Halima Barucha. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Halima. I'm the Advocacy Manager at Alliance for Girls. I'm here to speak on to support referrals 13H and 13F that are intended to close the gaps in access to period products and access to resources for young moms, such as childcare and financial opportunities. Both these referrals are really important because they're helping to close a gap in a very critical time, especially with COVID-19 and the different barriers that young moms and our girls and gender expansive youth are facing. I urge the board to pass these and just keep in mind that, especially for the When Young Moms Thrive referral item, this will create essential workforce training, financial resources, and professional development that is geared for young mom. And it will also allow our young moms to lead a research initiative with the Young Women's Freedom Center, for the Young Women's Freedom Center's Research Institute to identify the needs of young moms and provide recommendations that are much needed for the county so that we can better serve our young moms. And this research will also keep a core focus in areas that are in need, specifically Gilroy and East San Jose. And so I urge the board to vote yes for both these referrals to ensure that our young moms thrive and that our young girls and gender expansive youth have the opportunity to thrive. These referrals will have a ripple effect in the community and support multiple generations. Thank you.
Next speaker is Sharon Watkins. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hello, my name is Sharon Watkins. I am here to represent my son, Philip Watkins, who was shot and killed on February 11, 2015 by San Jose Police Department as a result of a mental crisis that he had. I'm speaking about the Crisis Mobile Mental Health Response Team, and I am here to say why police should not be included in those teams. Number one, including police implies that a crime will or has been committed. Number two, when police are present, the potential of your loved one being a victim of police violence is strongly increased. Number three, there's additional anxiety to families and a person in crisis when that loved one, when they see a police coming or when the police is present. And that anxiety sometimes will cause families to hesitate to seek help when they have their loved one in crisis. And also the last, I want to point out that the policemen, even with training, they have no real experience in clinical cases involving de-escalation of people that are suffering from a mental episode or having a mental crisis. Therefore, we need the ones that are professionals in dealing with those, the ones that have experience, and the ones that come to the scene to help and not to use weapons to de-escalate. Thank you for listening.
The next speaker is Raj Jaidev. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Good afternoon. This is Raj with Debug, and I first off want to thank Supervisor Ellenberg for drawing on the Protect Your People budget to use as a lens to evaluate new approaches for mental health crisis responses, and also the county's acceptance to respond and hear from the community. I think Sharon really articulated really analytically why we think the road forward is through community. But I do have a couple concerns that I think are echoed in what Sparky shared earlier. What we saw when we looked at what the county behavioral health responses to the BHCA's proposal was that although it did integrate their community-centered crisis response approach, they did regulate it to a limited set of who and how they would be responding to the calls. Most particularly, it looked like that PERT is still positioned to respond to the most volatile situations. I think taking community crisis responses out of those situations defeats the entire purpose of why we wanted a community response. The goal here is to save lives, and the way to save lives is to reduce the possibility of violence. The way to stop the possibility of violence is not to have armed police officers respond to mental health calls. That's what this movement has been about. It's what this moment has been about. It's why the families have been meeting with member organizations of the Behavioral Health Contractors Association, why we're so excited about their proposal. So I would suggest that we expand who the community crisis response could respond to, discontinue the PERT approach, remove officers entirely, because we're just going to find ourselves in the same situations that we did before. And secondly, to come up with a new number outside of 911, a 3-digit number that families can call, so we have a clear separation from county bureaucracies and law enforcement, and those calls be funneled and operationalized and executed solely through community. Thank you.
The next speaker is Joycelyn. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hello, my name is Jocelyn Aguilar. I'm a community organizer at Young Women's Freedom Center and also a soon-to-be young mother. And I'm here to encourage you guys to support this program. We are at a critical moment of crisis, a time like no other, and we are counting on you to make sure our girls make it through this time. I support the referral 13F to ensure that young moms in the margins have access to resources such as employment and childcare. I trust that the board will address this and ensure that our young moms thrive. Thank you.
The next speaker is Angelina. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Angelina Rodriguez. I'm the lead organizer for Young Women's Freedom Center, Santa Clara County. I am calling in regards to 13H and 13F. Here in Santa Clara County, girls are experiencing social isolation and lack of basic needs, and some are facing unsafe living situations. Research shows that resource deprivation as an indicator of risk for violence and child abuse. We know that effective prevention and intervention services are grounded in community and responsive to the unique gender, race, and cultural identities of the youth that they serve. I urge the board to pass referrals 13H and 13F to help close the gaps in basic resources for our girls and gender expansive youth. Also in regards to the crisis mobile health number, I'm a former residential counselor here in Santa Clara County, and I've had to deal with mental health crisis multiple situations and have requested trauma-informed and trauma-trained officers to respond to the scene. And I'm assuming that those are the officers that did respond to the scene. And they had still, though they went through training, they had violently and inadequately, in my opinion, handled situations that needed to be best situated in the hands of those that are trained specifically in mental health, even more specifically in mental health crisis needs. And I also agree that there should be an easy 3-digit number that should be linked to the mobile health line. Thank you.
The next speaker is Sharice Domingo. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
My name is Sharice Domingo and I'm with Silicon Valley Debug. I'm also calling to urge the county to adopt the Behavioral Health Contractors Association plan and proposal to respond to all mental health crises intervention calls, not just those deemed, quote, low level. We support more than 10 families here in our community who lost loved ones to police violence. And I particularly want to lift up AJ Phillips, a young man who lost his life to the police, yet was called a suicide, despite overwhelming information that it wasn't. His mother, Kim, couldn't make this call today, but she is one of the family members who is part of our organization and who leads our work. AJ was killed by police in his home with his mother, sister, and brother there. He needed help that night, not police. If mental health services showed up with compassion, this ending would have been different. But her experience is unfortunately not the exception, but the rule for some of the families here at Debug, especially those who called for mental health support and crisis intervention. Anthony Nunez, Diana Showman, Philip Watkins, Jesus Jane Montes. And it's from their lived experience that we support our collective call for a community-based response to all mental health and crisis calls as described by the BHCA. This plan is about saving lives. Thank you.
The next speaker is SCCYWFC. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Annalisa Ruiz. I'm the program manager of Young Women's Freedom Center in Santa Clara County, and I'm calling to speak on referrals 13H and 13F. Young moms are among our most vulnerable community members. The When Young Moms Thrive referral will create essential workforce training, financial resources, and professional development geared to young moms. It will also allow young moms to lead a research initiative with the Young Women's Freedom Center's Research Institute to identify the needs of young moms and recommendations for meeting those needs within Santa Clara County. As someone else stated before, it will focus on under-resourced areas of the county with the most needs, such as Gilroy and East San Jose. Please vote yes on this referral to ensure young moms have the opportunity to thrive. Thank you.
The next speaker is Alliance for Girls 2. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, thank you to the board for listening. My name is Kaylin. I'm from Alliance for Girls, and I'm speaking to agenda items 13H and 13F. We know, and multiple studies show, that when crises and disasters hit, girls, gender expansive youth, and women have greater risk to their survival and recovery in the aftermath, and that their vulnerability to crises are aggravated by race and poverty. More specifically, during the COVID pandemic, our research shows that girls and young women and young moms are experiencing social isolation and lack basic needs, and some are facing unsafe living situations. As a woman, mother, community member, and advocate of girls and gender expansive youth, I urge the board to pass referrals 13H and 13F to close the gap in access to period products, as well as close the gap in access to stigma-free resources for young moms most at the margins, including childcare, diapers, and financial opportunities. We're counting on you to make sure our girls and young women and young moms not only make it through this time, but thrive. Thank you to the County Board of Supervisors for this opportunity and for your time.
The next speaker is Alliance for Girls. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking. And they appear to have withdrawn their request. That concludes our public speakers.
Thank you very much for your help. We'll now go back to the board for comments and questions. And rather than going through each item, well, I guess I could do that, but I think I'll just go to each board member and you can choose the items you would most like to speak to. I'll start with Supervisor Ellenberg, then go to Supervisor Cortese, Supervisor Simitian, then Supervisor Wasserman. Supervisor Ellenberg.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have comments, I think, on 5 of the items. So I'll start with 13C, please, the deferred maintenance program. And here I was thinking about the management audit. It hasn't come to FGOC yet, but it is publicly available. And the findings showed some significant concerns with how the county project manages our capital projects. And what really stood out to me is that we don't currently establish cost or schedule baselines for projects. Therefore, we don't really, it's hard to track if we are over budget or behind schedule. And I don't see in what way we're proactively managing cost overruns. So let me turn first to Dr. Smith. Is rapidly improving our project management of capital projects a priority for you in the coming year?
It is a priority among many priorities, yes. It's,
well,
you know, as was pointed out, in order to balance this budget, we're going to have to eliminate some projects.
Right.
And so we're trying to right-size the project management team to deal with what we can actually do, yes.
Good. Clearly to me, given the size of our budget deficit and the size of the capital program, fixing this, I believe, really does need to be a priority, and I'll look forward to when this audit comes before the full board. With regard to item D, let me pull that out. Oh, sorry, I am not finding D. Let me move up to item I. Sorry, things seem to be out of order here. Okay, on item I want to just express my support for it, appreciate Supervisor Chavez's leadership here. Glad to see that the work being done by the Bay Area Tutoring Association is being included in the recommendation, and that our county is doing what we can to support students during this crisis. With regard to item J, I do certainly support this as well. And thank you, Sherry, for being responsive to my concerns from the October HHC meeting to find resources to address both the need for enhanced data analysis and community outreach for crisis intervention. Is there more information that you can share now about the level of financial resources that have been identified to support the campaign efforts, the primary goals or scope of the campaign, and what the planned timeline is? And if that's a very big answer, I'm happy to get it off agenda.
Hi, Supervisor Ellenberg and members of the Board of Supervisors. This is Sherry Terrell with Behavioral Health. We do have Mental Health Services Act dollars allocated toward the suicide prevention outreach campaign, and I can provide an off agenda to provide additional detail, but we have conducted a focus group and plan to launch the campaign by the end of this calendar year. So if there is an interest in receiving additional information, we would be happy to provide an off agenda.
Yeah, that I would appreciate that. I want to make sure that we really are focused on how we reach particularly, higher needs and harder to identify populations for this work. So thank you for that. And want to make sure as well that we've got a sufficient scale to match the need for support in the community as a whole. And I know that I do have somewhere comments on D, which I'm not seeing right now. So if you don't mind, Supervisor Chavez, coming back to me, I will find where those notes are. Thanks.
No problem. Supervisor Cortese.
Yeah, the one that I really had an interest in was the referral that you and I made, President Chavez, regarding the potential expansion or analysis of how we got to the 72 UBI youth and where we go from here. I'm going to continue to study what's been presented to us in the packet. I'm not sure I could ask any further questions on what we've asked at committee at this time. But it does feel like we backed into a maximum number on this, which was again, I just want to make it very clear to especially our colleagues who weren't involved in all the committee discussions leading up to this, was sort of the opposite way of how we wanted to approach it. We wanted to approach it based on the criteria, and then, of course, cost it out once we found the true eligible number, rather than lock into a cost number and then back into who gets in and who doesn't get in. So again, we'll continue to have an opportunity to discuss this. I just wanted to flag that as the real issue that I think we were looking for some feedback on. And I do think there's enough information in the packet to take us through the rest of the discussion next time we have an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Semidian?
No comments or questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Wasserman?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Just grab my tabs here. I would comment on 13B that I think both these projects are very important and in progress, and the reserves recommended seem necessary. I would ask on 13E, as in Edward, if there's any cost estimate that administration has come up with.
Yeah, so this is Greg. This is for the communication impact to SSA, correct?
Yes, it is, Greg. Thank you.
I mean, we can see if there's anyone here from SSA or Office of Public Affairs that maybe has a cost estimate for you.
So, good afternoon.
Hi, Robert.
How are you? So, specifically on the cost, what we had on that was the actual position in terms of what it would take to maintain that, which we had included in the package for the deletion of that position. As we said before, we recognize the importance of the position. We, for years, didn't have it when things were, when fiscal situation allowed for it. We did create the position to be able to have the capacity for it. It was a fairly junior position. The position itself was in the range of 60,000, fully loaded. It's around the 100,000 range for that position. It had turned out that the person in that position, who we were lucky to have, was very qualified, overqualified, and had moved on to another position about a year ago. And since that time, that position has been vacant. So the point being is we definitely recognize the value of it. We've operated, however, in the past without it, and have operated for the past year without it. And what essentially we do is just prioritize our communication strategy around responding to critical needs for communication versus the kind of proactive approach in the communication plans that we had created to do a more of an outreach perspective on that. So that the workload has fallen back on the manager of that overall position to do the critical response, and we partner with the county's office, county communication staff when we have critical needs on inquiry versus doing the proactive piece.
Thank you. Through the chair, if I may.
Please.
Thank you, Bob. So bottom line is the estimated cost for this referral you're saying is an FTE, not too dissimilar to what you had before.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, I just had one other comment I wanted to make, just in general, if I may.
Please.
Thank you. I appreciate the prioritizing. I appreciate this top 10 list here. I appreciate all the wonderful things that every supervisor that brought forth every referral has wanted to do. I think obviously the challenge is any dollar we spend on something is not available for something else. And I just asked through the chair to Dr. Smith that at all times that's made clear. That I know we all understand, you spend a dollar over here, you don't have it to spend over here. But prioritizing referrals and prioritizing our day-to-day business, our day-to-day mission statement, all of those things, that's very, very important to me, to make sure that the county does reliably and efficiently do the things that the community counts on us most to do. And then if we have excess dollars or means or personnel to do other things, that's wonderful. And certainly for 7 of the last 8 years, we had just that. My first couple of years, we didn't. This year, we don't. Odds are it'll expand into next year as well. And I think we just need to keep focused on doing the priorities, the jobs that we're expected to do. And if we're not able to do all these referrals, for another year or so, so be it. They don't go away. The need doesn't change. And we pick them up when we have the opportunity to do so again. Because when you start weighing layoffs of individuals with expansion of other things, I know all 5 of us care very much about those individuals and are trying to find ways to avoid those actual layoffs. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So I just wanted to make a couple comments in this area and say that, one of the things that's been most striking to me about the situation we're finding ourselves in with COVID-19 is that the repercussions for the, really the repercussions for our community have been felt very heavily in some areas and really very little in others. And one of the points I wanted to make is that COVID-19 has been particularly cruel to women and girls. We have a higher rate of women unemployed right now than we have in other dips in the economy, in part because childcare is unavailable and schools aren't open, and it's really limited the ability for many, many women to work. And I think one of the reasons that I brought forward the recommendations on the Alliance for Girls and the Young Women's Freedom Center and the period products is because those are actually real needs that people have right now that are more devastating, in part because of COVID-19. And that's very similar with the provision of the support services that are really focused on the African American community that Susan and I have brought forward. I say that mostly, I'm going to make some specific comments on each of these items, but I say that mostly because I think, Mike, the point you're raising that's so powerful is that how we prioritize our employees and being an employer of choice, even in really tough times, and balancing that with the services that we're obligated to provide, and then balancing that with the just yawning emerging needs that we're seeing in the community that we didn't see before. And I suspect that's part of the reason that there was interest in looking, for example, at the $100 million loan fund, because I recognize that there are lots of different places that the community needs patching up. So thank you for putting that in perspective, Mike, really. So what I wanted to do is I just wanted to say that I concur with Mike on the reserve item. I think that, those are projects that are in place, and really concur too with Supervisor Ellenberg about the deferred maintenance. Actually, Susan, I was entirely expecting Supervisor Smidian to jump in on that one. This has been his baby for as long as I've known him as this. So when this comes back to the board, I'll look forward to a discussion both in FGOC and to the full board. I also wanted to just say to Ms. Watkins, thank you for sharing your story about the loss of your son. I'm sorry that was a painful thing to share with us, but deeply appreciate that you did. I just wanted to go to item, it's number 6 on the chart, and I'm forgetting what letter it is, but this is a report for consideration relating to state or federal funding for intimate partner violence, sexual assault, child abuse, and services during the pandemic. What I really want to get is an assessment from our staff about the increased nature of the crimes in this area, both for child abuse and sexual abuse. And that I think it would be really important for us as a board to better understand what we think that need is, because it may impact the current structure of funds that we have going into this area and additional funds that we may be interested in pursuing. On the last item, on the transition for the transitional aged youth basic income pilot, one of the things that I'd be really interested in asking staff to consider is whether or not it makes sense for us to do a rolling, to be able to put young people in the program on a rolling basis instead of these really static times. Because I think if we have the budget in place and we can do it on a rolling basis, we're going to be much more responsive to young people. So I'd be interested in learning more about that as we come back to the final, for final board action. I see two of my colleagues have raised their hands again, and I'm going to go to Supervisor Ellenberg and then back to Supervisor Wasserman.
Thanks so much. Found the missing notes from item D that I had wanted to address. First of all, the behavioral health, protect your people. First, I do agree with the advocates in debug, and the folks that spoke up about the importance of moving even beyond the initial PERT concept, which when it was first designed and thought of was something potentially new and innovative. But I do share those concerns that in many cases still having law enforcement on site may actually increase the challenge. So I want to let you know that I heard you, and that I do think that a separate approach in many cases will make a lot of sense. I want to thank Sherry again for the report. And what I'd like to ask you for, Sherry, is ahead of the mid-year budget review in February, I'd like to request that administration provide a subsequent report and analysis that provides this same look at the Protect Your People budget as this report, but for our public safety departments. The report should provide a long-term lens using the Protect Your People model for reduction of and maintaining services. Is that clear? Do you have any questions for me about that one?
Sherry, are you on?
I'm here, sorry. No, I understand your request.
Great, thank you so much.
And then can I just ask one question on that?
Sure.
Sherry, on that front, is there a position currently, is there a second recruitment for the position since we met in August around the behavioral crisis unit?
Yeah, so during the August budget hearing, we had completed an add delete request to add a program manager to support the community mobile response. And I should be receiving a list of applicants this week for that particular recruitment.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me jump in, Susan.
No problem. And I've just been corrected by my team as well on something I should know better than by now. Of course, the request is not directly to Sherry, but to administration to bring that back. So apologies for that, Sherry. With regard to the transition age youth pilot, Supervisor Chavez, I heard what you said about the rolling. I'll be interested to see what administration says about that. I really am pleased that we are working on innovative ways to serve transition age youth. And I'm really appreciative about the recommended approach, that we gather evidence about how the pilot is working before we expand on it. And I really would note that overall, meaning really countywide, I think we do need to step up on creating clear metrics for our intended impacts on the community in every department, as well as our performance gathering data gathering game. I think in every department, we need to be clear about what the service goals are and whether our current allocations or programs or services are accomplishing those ends. And then I think we need to be using that evidence to drive our budget decisions. So that's an appreciation for this response and a request that becomes something that we do more broadly and consistently. And I think, Supervisor Chavez, that builds on your earlier comment about really being transparent and clear not only about how we're spending money, but whether it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. And if it's not, how do we regroup and pivot so that we can better serve our community?
Thank you. Mike.
Did you say Mike?
Yes.
You did.
Supervisor Wasserman.
Thank you, Madam President. Through the chair to Dr. Smith, if I can, I wondered if he could just give us a little perspective, if you will, of our finances in general, because I see us go in this direction, go in that direction, referrals, departments, everything else, but just an overall picture of where we stand at this moment.
Mike, because you don't think we all remember it from yesterday and you're wanting to reinforce it?
No, I do remember from yesterday.
Not you, I meant the rest of us.
No, I hear in some of our speakers concerns. I know not everyone has, none of us even has all the information that budget and everybody else does, and what pots are available to borrow from, what pots are replenishable, things like that. I just want to get a last minute word today, if I can, Madam President.
Of course. I was actually thinking, Mike, that it's such a good point that it might even be at the beginning of every meeting, a little mini presentation, because I don't think that's wrong. But you would like Dr. Smith to respond to that?
Yeah, I think for instance, I think it was very important when Dr. Smith mentioned, subsequent to the speakers that spoke, that the changes being put into place and recommended and suggested are not occurring until March.
Yes.
And this was November. And that, what people don't know is often frightful and concerning. And so if the doc has anything more to add, and maybe he doesn't, but if he does through you, I'd like to know that.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, I always do have an interest in giving perspective. In many ways, that's clearly my job, is to get perspective and make sure everybody remembers. So now I'll draw way back, since I'm an old guy and remember it. 40 plus years ago, most of us have heard of, probably most in the audience never saw, Prop 13. And I think, it's been common parlance or belief in the community that Prop 13 was a huge disaster for California governments, and it was. But the effect that it had on Santa Clara County is dwarfed by what's going on today. Remember, our three major sources of revenue are property tax, state subventions, and federal subventions. Prop 13 destroyed property tax access and disabled the county from setting its own tax rate, which was a huge loss. But at the time, the state had a large excess reserve of revenue. So what happened is the state distributed that money to counties and local jurisdictions and essentially covered all of the loss for the first few years of Prop 13 while there was readjustment and decrease in some services. But the year after Prop 13 went in effect, this county did not cut anything significant out of the budget. Over the next 40 years, we've struggled with Prop 13, and particularly because of redevelopment, which limited our access to tax increment. We and other counties had a huge problem trying to keep up. Because of the leadership in this county, we were able to destroy or dissolve redevelopment. And I'll remind you that our county counsel, James Williams, argued the case in front of the California Supreme Court and has been the reigning expert in redevelopment law since then. And because of that, we were able to benefit, mostly because of that, but also because of a strong economy. We were able to benefit for 10 years with an increased growth and the ability to do lots of services. Right now, property tax is stabilized and decreasing, and the state is taking away some of the property tax that we were able to garner through redevelopment by eliminating part of ERAF. The state, or the feds, I should say, are putting our revenue sources at risk, particularly in the health system and social services system. We really have no backstop, nobody to keep us whole, and we have a huge deficit that will continue on for years. So people think of Prop 13 as bad. We'll look back 40 years and say, how did you ever make it through 2020? That's a good perspective.
Because of our brilliant leadership and employees. Thank you, Dr. Smith.
Thank you. And are there any other comments from my colleagues? With that, I am gonna just wrap up our meeting today. We are adjourned, and I apologize. I should know the answer to this, but I didn't write it down. When is our next budget hearing, Dr. Smith?
I'm sorry, my mic wasn't working. Can you repeat the question?
Our next budget hearing or meeting?
Wednesday, I think, Madam Chair.
Next Wednesday, a week from tomorrow. Okay.
Right.
A week from tomorrow, then we are adjourned, and we'll see you a week from tomorrow on budget, but we will see you on Tuesday for a board meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.